Let's talk about a few key points around 529 plans, and also how Hawaii employees can now contribute automatically to 529 plans through their payroll deduction. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hawaii Retirement Show. Today's episode, we're talking about college savings for your children or grandchildren. And the vehicle that we're going to talk about on this episode is the 529 plan for college savings. There's also the Coverdell savings. You could use a regular brokerage account to save for educational expenses. There's also some strategies where you can use funds directly from your IRA that go directly to the educational institution, and there's some strategies around that as well. But the most common, the most well-known, and the one we're going to talk about today is the 529 plan. And the reason this episode is somewhat timely is recently the Hawaii 529 plan just rolled out this ability for state, city, and county workers to do payroll deductions directly from their paycheck into these 529 plan, these educational savings vehicles, which is a good thing. You know, I guess it takes a step out of the process there. Instead of earning the money and then putting into the 529 plan, you can just directly take it out of the your payroll, your paycheck, which is a good thing. So I just want to cover some key points, high-level stuff on 529 plans and college savings. And I think the first place to start is understanding that these are tax-advantaged accounts because your contributions will grow tax-deferred. Okay, so you're not putting in pre-tax money. You've paid the taxes, you've earned this money. Now you're putting it into this college savings plan, this 529, and it'll grow tax-deferred. And if you use the money for qualified educational expenses, the withdrawals or distributions will be tax-free. Okay, so it's important to understand what is a qualified educational expense. Things like tuition, books, room and board. You can't say, I don't know, like any other expenses while somebody is attending college, like that aren't really relevant to the education and the institution. So if you have something that you're like, I don't know, does this count? Look up what is a qualified educational expense. Okay, but pretty much it's the steak and potatoes of educational expenses: tuition, books, room and board. Right. The other thing to understand about 529 plans is that they can be used for K through 12 tuition, right? Or vocational school. It doesn't have to be just college in the traditional sense of, University of Hawaii or whatever it is. It can be used for, private school and high school, right? Now, there is a limit to that. I think it's up to like $10,000 a year or something like that. But you can use some of those funds for K through 12. Okay, it's not just for college. And you, like I said before, you can use it for vocational school and any other kind of niche. I don't know, maybe it's like a like culinary school or something like that. You just got to make sure that the institution is, legitimate and that it qualifies as an institution to be used for 529 plans. You can't use it because your buddy's teaching a class on, how to cast your fishing rod or something like that. But there's also this new Roth IRA rollover option where you can roll over some of the leftover funds into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary, but it's got to meet certain conditions. It sounds a lot better than it is because of the restrictions on it, and I don't want to go down that road right now. It's kind of a relatively new thing. I did post a little flow chart on that, the 529, the Roth IRA rollover, and that's up on the Hawaii Retirement Show website if you want to check it out. So another key point that I have to mention here is that with these 529 accounts, the beneficiary of the account is the child or grandchild who's going to use it for educational expenses. If they do not use it, there is some flexibility in that you can transfer this account to another eligible family member. So it doesn't have to stay with the original beneficiary. You can change who the beneficiary will be. This might be common in that maybe you save it for your first child. They don't use it. They're going to go work shipyard or do something else, and they don't want to go to college. You can change the beneficiary now to the second in line, or the second child, right? Or same thing with grandkids. You can move it between them. You can even change it back to, let's say you're saving for your child and they don't use it all. You could change it back to yourself as the parent, and make yourself now the beneficiary. And maybe you want to go take some classes at the at the local college for whatever reason, right? So there is some flexibility there. You can't go crazy with it. It has to be an eligible family member. You can't say, well, they're not using it, so I'm going to give it to the neighbors. I'm going to name the neighbor's kid as the beneficiary, right? There's some restrictions there, but there is some flexibility there as well. So just be aware of that. So the other thing to consider, 529 plans are state-run plans, right? So Hawaii has a Hawaii 529 plan. So do all the other states, or at least to my knowledge, all of them do. Maybe some of them don't. But they're state-specific, and why that's important is a lot of times in some states, there's a tax deduction or a credit for contributions, as long as you're contributing to your state's plan, right? Hawaii does not have that. But in some states, let's say you contribute $5,000, that's a $5,000 tax deduction because you put it in Hawaii's 529 plan. Now, with that being said, you don't have to use your state's plan. One of the most popular 529 plans out there is Utah's plan. It's called My 529. It's very popular, very low cost, and I highly recommend it. Hawaii has a great plan as well. Because there's no state tax deduction for the contributions to these things, then it kind of opens you up to, you don't have to use this one. I would say absolutely, if you get a state tax deduction for using your state's 529 plan, then that's almost always going to be the best route. Now, if the state doesn't offer that state income tax deduction, then you can kind of look elsewhere and see, do I like my state's plan? Is there a better one? So you can shop around and compare different plans. Hawaii has a great one. The investments are run through Vanguard as the custodian. But I would say, all in all, the most popular one that I've come across, just speaking with people and doing my research, is Utah's My 529 plan. But Hawaii has a great plan as well. So you could shop around. I would say with the investments in these things, a lot of them offer target enrollment investments, right? So it's similar to a target retirement date fund or a life cycle fund, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. But these are target enrollment date, right? And so you're going to kind of set it in these funds if you use these, and it's going to be more aggressive or more equity-based early on. And as it shifts, it'll get more conservative into fixed income and bonds and whatnot as you get closer to the time you're going to use it, right? Which is similar to life cycle funds. Early on, you have plenty of time ahead of you. You can absorb some risk. You're going to get some higher returns for that. And then as you get closer to it, to the time you're going to retire or the time you're going to need these 529 plans, you want to start to pull back some of that risk, not all of it, but some of it, because you don't want it to come the time when you need these funds for your, son or daughter's college tuition, and you find yourself in a down market where the market's down 30%. Then there's something called sequence of return risks that'll impact that account for the subsequent years, right? Because you're pulling from it in a down year. So there are these target enrollment date funds, which are similar to life cycle and target retirement funds. They're kind of straightforward and simple for this purpose here. So then we come to, how much do you need, right? And this is the question that I get asked a lot, is how much should we be saving? And it's a very complicated question in that there's a lot of variables, and it's hard to project out so far down the road. If you look at the cost of college tuition on average, how much it's been increasing year over year, it's far outpacing, traditional inflation, right? Or consumer price index. It's more and more expensive. I personally don't think that can continue. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a place where, you're getting $100,000 bachelor degree from, just a mid-tier school, which I think is just getting a little bit out of control. So I think that'll slow down, but it's hard projecting out what college tuition will cost in the future, or how the landscape of higher education changes in the future, right? And that's why I always tell people it doesn't have to be an all or none, right? Just save what you can or what you think is appropriate. And if there's a deficit, then you can have the son or daughter, they take out a little financial loan, right? Or, you find other means with other assets to kind of fill the gap. But it is really hard to project out. Now, there's a few key questions you can ask yourself. Do I expect my child to go to private or public school? Are we talking Ivy League or, what I did? I went to Windward Community College and I went to UH West Oahu here to finish up my bachelor's degree. Some people, they want to send their kid away to a good school, Stanford, something like that, right? And they're going to go live out there. There's going to be other expenses because they're living on their own. They're going to rent an apartment. They're going to be at this nice school that has high tuition. That's a completely different situation for planning your savings. There's no right or wrong. It's whatever you think is right. So again, I think that's a good place to kind of stop it here. I just want to touch on some key points around the 529 plan, especially with this announcement that you can now do for state, city, county workers. You can do this payroll deduction directly into these 529 plans, the Hawaii 529 plan specifically. So that wraps it up. If there's anything in particular you'd like me to talk about on the show going forward, email it over to aloha@hawaiiretirementshow.com, and I'll catch everyone on the next one.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.